News. So there are a couple of articles from the South China Morning Post claiming amazing things about Chinese internet security without enough details. Like these guys, Purple Mountain Laboratories, claim that their new microcomputer on a chip is 100 times more secure than existing ones with no further details. So I don't know how you could measure a thing like that. I don't know how you could prove a thing like that. So anyway, it's not clear what it means. Took 2 years to develop, and it's going to be the same cost as the currently one, and seamlessly replace existing chips and hopefully be much more secure. Now that might well be true, because of course the existing systems on a chip tend to be vulnerable, but they're responding to the Israeli attack on, I don't think it was Hamas, it was Hezbollah, where they made their pagers blow up. And they're claiming they did that with malware on the processor that made it heat up and blow up, which I do not think has been proven. But they're claiming that their device would be immune to that. So it sounds like they're mainly worried about DDoS attacks. And it might be 100 times more resistant to DDoS attacks. They say it has 3 processors, so if one fails, the other 2 can take over the load. So that might make it more resistant to DDoS attacks. And they also make a claim that they're going to make 100 trusted data spaces within the next 4 years, so they can share files in some secure way. And once again, I'm not really understanding exactly what the improvement here is. Infrastructure for secure data circulation and use, enabling efficient sharing, so it sounds like Dropbox or Google Drive, but somehow, hopefully more secure. Again, not clear. However, it's a good idea to make your stuff more secure if that's what they're actually doing. If you read the president's announcements about cybersecurity for America, they're similarly very weak on specifics. In fact, the President Biden Council on AI Security just quoted random numbers from some source without even understanding what they mean. They limited it to like 10 to the 25 calculations per second or something, which is just a random meaningless number. This is the problem when you have non-technical people writing a paper. It's probably wiser for them not to attempt to say technical things if they don't actually have someone on the team that understands what they're saying. So there's a lot of talk about punishing Google for antitrust violation in America. There's been a recommendation from the Department of Justice that they force them to spin off Chrome and exit the browser market, because now they get to control the browser and use the browser to push you to their search engine and other products, so they control both the supply and the doorway, which is kind of how you make a monopoly. I don't think it'll go anywhere in America, because the lobbying from tech is far too powerful. Our government is essentially too corrupt to do it, but Europe probably will do it. Europe has a whole lot of punishment of high-tech companies, and they're pretty serious about it. And so they're giving Europe a $7 billion class action over search engine dominance, the same issue. That their practice of distributing a browser that goes to their search engine, and also their practice of paying Apple to make it the default engine in their browser, all they say is an illegal use of monopoly power to force everyone to use Google.
I was reading Apple is receiving 20 billion a year for making Google the default search engine.
Something like that. Yeah, they pay Apple billions. Yeah.
And even Firefox is receiving $500 million a year.
Yeah, I think it's almost all of Firefox funding comes from this.
Yeah, 80% of the funding.
Oh yeah. So of course, it's not clear to me that ought to be illegal. Anyway, I mean, you're just paying for advertising is essentially what it is. Anyway, they are going to be punished for it. Perhaps it violates the law. I'm not exactly clear why that would be a law. I mean, now what Microsoft used to do that got them sued is they would force all retailers to never sell a machine with Linux on it. They say, if you sell a machine with Linux on it, we'll block you with all Microsoft products, putting you out of business. Now, that was abuse of monopoly power. It's not clear to me that Google paying for advertising is abuse of monopoly power. Anybody else could pay for advertising too, I think. But anyway, it'd be the details, I'm sure, of the contract and such.
And also, by the way, the price that it seems is worth Chrome, who's going to pay that kind of money?
Well, Microsoft could pay that money to promote Bing. That would be that's number 2 anyway.
Well, so you're saying buying for eliminating the product?
Microsoft could pay Apple to make Bing the default search engine. So I'm not sure I see monopoly abuse. I mean, monopoly power is when you're so powerful, you squeeze everyone else out of the market. But the fact is, Microsoft is in the browser market and the search engine market, and they're as big as Google. So that's why I'm not sure I see a monopoly there. Other people, anyway, this is going to be going through the court system, and I guess this is what their defense lawyer will probably say, and we'll see what happens. But I mean, this is why Apple has always been escaping the monopoly market in iPhones, because there's Android. We are not a monopoly. There's another player in the market. You can just go buy that. And you can't have monopoly abuse if you don't have a monopoly. Anyway, so this is interesting. These guys got fined $11 million for data breaches. Normally you don't get fined that much for them. It was because they failed to protect them, they say, during a wave of cyber incidents in 2021. Now, I would like to think this must be because they did something outrageously insecure. They used a third-party form to pre-fill information. And after discovering the hack, they ceased the practice, but hackers regrouped to obtain the license numbers after discovering that they were transmitted another message. So it sounds like they made mistakes with the data, and hackers got it. But again, I would like to see a very clear violation of established standards to punish them for this. I mean, I actually just wrote a letter to a client today. They wanted me to check their security. I investigate all their security, and I said, you are doing good practices. You're using appropriate, reputable companies with encryption. You might get hacked, but you are not guilty of negligence. And it's not clear to me that these people are guilty of negligence. You'd have to do something very far from industry norms, I would think. Anyway, so I'd sort of like to know more about these cases in court. So Trump is apparently serious about the tariffs. I think he's serious about the tariffs and about deporting alien immigrants. I think both of these are disastrous policies that will greatly harm the country, but Trump believes in them. In particular, he's always believed that tariffs are paid by other countries. The fact that it's false doesn't matter to him at all. Facts in general don't matter to him much.
We pay as well.
Oh, we pay. We're the only one to pay. It's a tax on us. It's a sales tax on America. The other country doesn't have to pay anything. They can just sell it somewhere else. But he believes it, so he's going to tariff Mexico and China and Canada. And people say this would have an enormous effect, being several $1,000s per household of loss to American consumers, because everything you buy will be more expensive, and more than just by this much, because a lot of the products you buy are made from imports. And so they're going to have a multiplicative factor. So we'll see. But I think he's really going to do it. We're going to see. So there's something called the Bing Wallpaper app in the Windows Store. This is a mighty strange thing to put a wallpaper on your machine, and it turns out they claim it's doing terrible things. What somebody did was download it and then reverse engineer it. He just used IL Spy, so it's apparently written in .NET, and we'll do that next semester in the malware analysis. .NET is like Java. It's very easy to reverse back to readable source code. And so he went in there and looked at it with IL Spy, and he discovered that it can alter your Chrome browser extension preferences. It can decrypt and read many cookies for tracking purposes. It can then have prompt ups with configurable timing, use encrypted configuration storage, and detect or intercept browser launches to promote extensions and launch arbitrary URLs. So this sounds very much like the typical browser-based malware that pops up pages you don't want, changes your browser settings, and so on. And it also installs Bing Visual Search without asking users, and so on. This is the sort of thing you call malware, potentially unwanted program. It's also pretty much on brand for Microsoft. Microsoft has been putting ads on the desktop, putting ads in the start menu, popping up full screen things to tell you to upgrade to Windows 11. And they used to make it where you could click yes or no. And if you click no, they just treated that as yes and installed it anyway. So none of this is that far from normal practice for Microsoft, but it's also arguably malicious. So anyway, it's interesting to know. Microsoft is denying a few small accusations around the corners, but not really denying most of these claims.
I'm surprised that already. I noticed this is a recent update. So 2 weeks ago, I noticed in the library's computers.
Yeah, anyway, I don't know why you bother putting wallpaper on, but I remember when the very first Android phone came out, I immediately went to the store. I got it. I went to the Android store, and the very top stuff was like custom wallpaper, and it was all malware. And I said, "Wow, malware, cool." So anyway, they're proposing a law for require bare minimum security standards for hospitals and healthcare organizations. They require them to have multi-factor authentication and other minimum standards. This is not a law yet. It's going through the process, but this seems like a good idea. This ought to, and now that we've had a big hack recently of the healthcare system. It's motivated people to try to improve this. And there you go. Singapore is short of water, so they're using recycled water. They've been doing it for years, so now they're going to conferences with the brew made from sewage to get people used to this. This is something I think we're all going to have to get used to. Fresh water is going to be very scarce as sea levels rise and the earth warms. Pretty soon, everyone is going to have to do this. They've been trying to do it for many decades in America, in dry areas like Los Angeles. And even San Francisco, we pump the water in from very far away. There isn't enough water. This is obviously the source of water that will be available, is to clean up the sewage and use that water.
It's easier to clean the sewage water than to desalinize the
Oh, yes.
seawater.
Oh, much easier than desalinizing, yes. That's why this is the cost-effective solution. It's just that people have some aversion to it.
Well, this reminds me, do you remember when it was a year or 2 years ago, there was a picture that went viral, a guy working a drink company, I think it was a beer company
Yeah.
in China that was peeing into the...
Yeah, into the vat,
that
yeah.
went viral.
Yeah, well, that's why people have a bad attitude about it, but that's our future, and of course, that's what we'll be doing on all the spaceships forever. And apparently in Singapore, I guess they don't have enough water.
Well,